The honourable member for Courtenay-Alberni.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for staying so late. Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed that I have to come back here, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the plight of Wayward Distillery in Courtenay and Dave, the owner, and his employees. They are true heroes, Mr. Speaker. They came and stepped up to help Canadians. They basically pivoted their distillery to supply hand sanitizer at the height of the pandemic back in late March and early April. They supplied hand sanitizer to keep local police, healthcare workers, people in nonprofits, frontline service workers safe. And Mr. Speaker, they then carried on to donate tens of thousands of dollars of sanitizer to the community in the spirit of goodwill, especially in that understanding of that we're all in this together, Mr. Speaker. And in that spirit, I really just can't say enough about Dave and his employees and the sacrifice they made and the sense of urgency and seriousness they took, Mr. Speaker, using their own supplies to help support making sure that we were all safe and getting through this difficult period of time. Mr. Speaker, they were then engaged by a supplier to Loblaws to, come up with a large amount of sanitizer for their workers in the back end. And they were supplying those workers to ensure that they were safe, and they were pivoting their business to stay afloat and keep the ball rolling and keep their employees employed. Mr. Speaker, they then we all found out that the government of Canada procured hand sanitizer from countries around the world, including China, and that hand sanitizer flooded the Canadian market and drove prices down. And little did Dave know, but the supplier had now outsourced supply from somewhere else, including foreign supply of hand sanitizer, and then suddenly cut off his contract. Now, Mr. Speaker, as you can imagine, when you're supplying a large amount of volume to local frontline service workers, to a large chain like Loblaws, you have to order ahead of time. You can't just order a few days ahead or a week ahead. So Dave went and he ordered 6 weeks ahead worth of sanitizer, and then the contract just was cut off. And the foreign sanitizer that flooded the Canadian market was cheap. It was less than cost that Dave could even afford to get it to market. So Dave now is stuck with hundreds of thousands of dollars of sanitizer, Mr. Speaker. And I raised this question in December, and the Deputy Prime Minister referred me to her office and to her staff. And in turn, they sent their regional director's contact to me, and Dave had a meeting with them, and they took his contact information, and they said they would put it on a list. But they haven't ordered any sanitizer, Mr. Speaker, and they haven't helped facilitate that to this date. So Dave's sitting on this sanitizer. Dave can't collect the wage subsidy, Mr. Speaker, because while he was selling sanitizer at cost, or even below cost, his revenue was going up. So that therefore made him ineligible to apply for the emergency wage subsidy to support his employees. He was also excluded from the SECRA loan. So every step of the way, Dave has been excluded. And this is just another example of the government's procurement process. And we need a federal procurement strategy, Mr. Speaker, that puts Canadians first. I mean, we hear the president in the U.S., Joe Biden, talk about an American strategy where they're going to source out local companies and keep jobs local. We are not doing that here in Canada. This government has abandoned Dave and Wayward Distillery. And if they go out of business because they put Canadians first, it will just be an absolute stain on Canada. And these are heroes, Mr. Speaker, and I'm urging the government to fix it, fix their eligibility for their programs, and procure from Dave and the Wayward Distillery. They deserve much better. The Canadians need to know that we're supporting those heroes that helped us at the beginning of this pandemic and continue to be there for us.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Export Promotion, Small Business and International Trade.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his intervention tonight. I have traveled with him in previous times, certainly pre-pandemic times, to Nunavut in order to visit with and engage with small business owners there. And I know how dedicated he is to small businesses in his community, but right across the country. And when I listened to the story of Dave and the Wayward Distillery, I couldn't agree more with my colleague. They are the true heroes of this pandemic, certainly. And like so many entrepreneurs and small business owners, they're clearly adapting and doing the best they can in very difficult circumstances. I would like to, to respond in more detail. Of course, this is the first time that I'm hearing of this particular issue, and I would be happy to dig into it further. Certainly, the criteria that we have put in place have gotten very, very positive feedback from the entrepreneurs that I've spoken to, but I can understand that how in David's case, not experiencing any revenue drop does mean that perhaps his company in particular is not eligible for some of our programs. I am always happy to go through, the myriad of programs that our government has put in place. There are many of them, as my colleague opposite knows, and without these programs, so many of our Canadian workers and business owners would have already closed, would have already lost their paychecks. And so allow me just to say, that we have tried to adapt and adjust our programs along the way in order to respond to specific situations. I can think of numerous examples, and the rent program is, of course, one of them. We had heard from opposition members, from our own caucus, and from entrepreneurs across the country that certain adjustments need to be made, and the rent subsidy now is responding exactly to what entrepreneurs on the ground need. The program, as you know, colleague, is there to cover 90% of rent, and that goes directly to the business owner and not to the landlord. Applications for that program opened very quickly, and I understand that my colleague opposite, originally asked about this, pointing out or very clearly criticizing the government for delays when in reality, less than a week after we passed the legislation, it was effective. And when it went to the Senate for ratification, the Senate was able, to review the legislation and approve it within, I believe it was, a single day. So everybody right across government, from the members in this House to the many people working behind the scenes as public servants, to our senators, are all working in tandem in order to bring the support and the assistance that we know that our small business owners need. Let me just continue to explain in response to the member's question during question period that the wage subsidy was continued until the summer, and there was never, not ever, a gap in providing a wage support to our business owners. We moved quickly and we instituted that extension in a way that provided continuous support for all small business owners. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, it's clear.
Mr. Speaker, I hope that it is clear for my colleague that the federal government has been there since day one of the pandemic. This government has committed to being there as long as necessary. Unfortunately,
the time has now expired.
Le temps est expiré. Il y a une autre minute pour...
Sorry, there isn't any time left.
Alberni.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague and friend. We have talked and we have worked together to fix the rent program. We were disappointed they didn't backdate it, but there is gaps. We know that startups have been left out. We were concerned about the CERB clawback and businesses that could go under as a result of that. Dave is still not able to access these programs because he did the right thing.
I'm just going to interrupt the honourable member there momentarily, and just to see if interpretation is working. I just ask if honourable member give a check now to see if interpretation is okay.
Is it okay if I start again, Mr. Speaker?
No, just hang on for a moment, and we'll see if it's working. Just stand by. We won't take away from the honourable member's time. Could I just check to see, we're getting the French translation there now? Okay. Merci beaucoup pour...
Thank you very much for your assistance.
Continue now again, the honourable member for Courtenay-Alberni, if he can pick it up where he left off. We weren't too far into his comments. If he wants to start at the top of the minute, that's fine too. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'll start at the beginning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague. We've worked together on a number of issues, including the commercial rent program. We were glad to see them fix the broken program, but we were also disappointed they didn't backdate it. Mr. Speaker, we know there's gaps in the programs for startups. The CERB clawback. People like Dave that went and helped Canadians came to our rescue that now are excluded from those programs because their revenue's gone up, even though they didn't make proper profit. We're hoping the government will work with those individuals, find ways to get them access to those emergency programs so we don't lose them, so we don't lose these businesses that did the right thing. And we really need a strategic, socially responsible, and more sustainable approach to public procurement in Canada. Sandra Hamilton, who lived in my riding, she cites that the heart of the UK recovery strategy is around procurement and aligning those policy objectives with the 2030 United Nations, social goals and sustainability goals. So it's really important that we marry up and do what other countries are doing and learn from other countries what they're doing. So I'm hoping that you'll apply that when it comes to procurement and when we talk about recovery here from COVID-19.
Secretary Parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I am always very interested to see what other countries around the world are doing in order to use the good ideas that exist elsewhere. And of course, to listen and to continue to work. I want to continue to work with my colleague to see how we can adjust better the existing programs.
Also, to remind my colleague that just this Tuesday, the Minister of Small Business announced the new HASCAP program, and days later, that is, as of next week, small businesses will be
I must interrupt the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. We're again experiencing some gaps in interpretation. So I'll just ask her to stand by. I'll using my voice in English, I'll just wait until it appears that we have the interpretation working again. Seems to be okay. I should point out that this is in no way related to any issues with the wonderful work of the interpreters. This has all to do, frankly, with the audio capabilities and their ability to do their jobs, which they do so well. So we'll get back. If I could ask the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to just finish her last few thoughts, and then we'll get on to the next speaker. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Small Business, or to the Minister of Small Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me join my voice to yours in thanking our incredible translators. I do enjoy flipping back and forth from French to English, and I hope that does not cause any anxiety in that respect. But